Hi guys, my name is Ivo and I'm from mytestedasp.net. As you may already know, I am currently recording a video series about Entity Framework performance. This will be the last part in which I'm just going to talk about various tips and tricks because essentially we covered the most important parts if you want to write efficient queries. So let's see what I've got here. First, if you have a slow query, how to debug it in quotes. If you have a slow query, this is not a very slow query, but if you find something that is lagging with Entity Framework, you may test first whether it's Entity Framework or whether it's SQL Server. So the best way to test it is to run a profiler by writing SQL Server profiler, then just run the query once, wait for it, and I didn't turn on the profiler, so I'm going to run it again. Good. So I will find the query, this one, and I will run it. I will copy it and paste it in SQL Server, and I will run it, but I will make sure I am including the actual execution plan. When I execute the query with the execution plan, I can analyze what was the slowest part of this query, and in some cases I may find a solution to my performance issue. SQL Server is also giving advices. For example, it says missing index. You can create a non-clustered index on cat's age with including of owner ID. So essentially, if I want to make this query faster, I may include that index in my SQL Server. Talking about indexing, you should consider adding indexing every time you find a column is more times read than written to. For example, if I have a query which reads the age column of the cats and it reads them quite often, and I'm filtering on that column and I'm searching by that column, and I'm not creating that many cats, then I certainly have more reads on that column than I have more writes, so creating an index may be valuable. For example, if you have a site like Stack Overflow or some advertising site or any kind of site where most of the users read something and search for something without writing to it. For example, a blog, a forum, an advertising site, and so on. And if you have a forum where lots of people read and only small part of your visitors is or of your visitors write any sort of content, you may consider adding indexes. Think about it. How many times you go to Stack Overflow to read something, and how many times you actually post a question. So if you would like for me to create a video about indexing, let me know down below in the comments and I will do it for you. In Entity Framework, indexing is done very easy by either adding an index attribute or by creating an index in the onModelCreating method. The third problem I would like to talk about is client functions, and that Entity Framework Core has the ability to evaluate client functions. I'm currently talking about Entity Framework Core 3, but Entity Framework Core 2 has a different functionality, so make sure you check it out in the documentation. For now, in Entity Framework Core 3, you can evaluate a client function. This is a client function that's not part of my database. I can evaluate the client function in the top level select statement. So essentially this client function can be evaluated. Let me show you how it won't work. For example, if I write a client function here and I say filter the owner by a client function, Entity Framework will throw an error. Here it is. It will say that filter owner cannot be translated. And that's a good thing because it may lead to a slower query. If you have an inner select in which you're selecting something with a client function, for example like this one, it will work because it's in the top level select. But keep in mind that if you have some sort of client evaluation, change tracking may occur on the entities you fetch here, because I've said before that when you use select you won't fire change tracking, and that's true. But if you try to evaluate something on the client, for example here I'm selecting owner name, and as we saw it works even in nested selects, as long it is in the top level select, the last select used in the query, it will be completely fine. But all the entities you fetch to select through that client function will be tracked by the change tracker, and that will hinder your performance. So I'm going to run again the query. We can see that it's a little bit slower, and currently I have 10,000 tracked entities in my change tracker. And if I don't use a client evaluated function and run it, I will see that I have 0 tracked entities and the query seemed quite faster. So when you use client functions, consider that the change tracker may include your entities even if you're not using them directly, and even if you're using a select statement. So make sure you avoid client functions if you can. Before I show you other tips and tricks you can use to improve your performance, I would like to thank my sponsors. As you may already know, I'm creating open source projects for ASP.NET, and these projects are created in my free time, so I decided to start Patreon and open collective pages so people can contribute to my projects, and some people already did. I will be very happy if you decide to support me in one way or another. And I have sponsors, some companies that are trusting me, and I'm extremely thankful. That's Softuni, that's Smart IT, and Noble Hire. Thank you guys, you truly rock. And if you want me to continue providing free knowledge on YouTube, or if you like my projects, consider supporting me too, or introduce my projects to your company. Thank you. So what other tips we can use with Entity Framework? If you have a highly scalable solution, you can use async await. Each method has an async version, so you should use that if you decide to if you have a scalable solution. It will improve your performance numerous times. Another tip is to always dispose the DB context, and if you're using it for bulk operations, for example, if you want to create 10,000 and more entries in the database, make sure you dispose the DB contexts every 200 or 300 inserts or updates, whatever the operation you're doing, but don't use the DB context for too many objects, because it gets polluted and it starts working slower and slower with each object added to it. So if you want to insert lots of entities in the database, you can do it this way. For example, if you have 1000 entities, you can do it insert 200, dispose the DB context and create new one. Insert another 200, dispose the DB context and create a new one, and so on. So make sure you dispose it as frequently as you can. Other thing you can consider is use caching techniques. You can use the built-in cache. For example, in ASP.NET, you can pre-cache the values. You can use a concurrent dictionary in your code. You can use a Redis cache, whatever you like, but make sure you cache all the entries and all the queries and all the data you're not updating frequently. For example, if you have on your homepage, if you have a statistics, like on my homepage, these 2.3 million downloads are get from the NuGet API. So essentially on my homepage, I'm calling the NuGet API and I'm trying and I'm getting the data and writing it down here. And if I do that for each home page request on my site, it will be too slow. That's not a good practice to fetch an external external data on your home page. So essentially I cache it and I update that value once per day. So you can do the same thing in your site. If you have lots of data you're fetching on your home page, for example, cache it for 1 hour, cache it for 1 day. You should decide, depending on the business purposes, how often the data should be updated. But that will improve your performance like 100 times and more. Another thing you should enable is to turn on multiple result sets. This allows the C# language to fetch multiple data from the database by using a single connection. So it will improve your performance if your database is not local and is it's not local to the server. You will get multiple queries by a single connection, and that's a huge thing if your database is not on your local server. Another thing you should consider is to try Entity Framework Plus. Entity Framework Plus is a free and open source library to enhance Entity Framework. So it has additional operations, for example, query filters, future queries, batch delete, dynamic link, and many more. So if you have a specific task you want to do and Entity Framework is not doing the job perfectly, maybe these guys will help you. And finally, you should consider that Entity Framework may not be the answer for your solution. Maybe your database is a bit different, or maybe it's too specific so that Entity Framework queries will not work optimally in it, or maybe you don't need a SQL storage at all. You may need a non-relational database. And you may need a very fast ORM, and if that's the case, you can try Dapper. Dapper is an ORM from Stack Exchange, the guys behind Stack Overflow, and essentially it's a very good ORM. It's a lot simpler than Entity Framework, and it does not provide such easy interface, and it's you should write more SQL language in it, but it's very fast and Stack Overflow uses it. So you can take a look at Dapper too, and if nothing works, native SQL is your friend. You can open the database connection and just execute native SQL. So guys, I hope you enjoyed my Entity Framework series. I covered the most important topics if you want to use Entity Framework correctly and don't hit performance issues. Make sure if you missed my last videos to watch them, because I give very nice and advanced tips and tricks on how to use Entity Framework. And that's it. If you enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment below. And if you have any suggestion for my future topics, let me know in the comments. And again, I would like to thank my sponsors, and if you want to support me, you can do it on Patreon or on Open Collective, or you can even do a one-time donation on PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee. I will be extremely thankful, and you will motivate me to continue sharing my knowledge with you. Thanks guys, and bye.